Hello, and welcome to the Thinking Elixir podcast, where we cover the news of the community and learn from each other. My name is Mark Erickson.
And I'm David Bernheisel.
Let's jump into the news. First up, Elixir 1.19.0 RC2 was released, and this one is being billed as the last stop before the official 1.19 release. If you're wanting to get some early feels for it, download it, run it on your project, give any feedback, this is the last time to do that. But the results are looking good for this release, as the folks at remote.com, who are using Elixir, obviously, they confirmed that their code base compiles 55% faster on Elixir 1.19, and all the type checking is still around 1 millisecond per module on average, even with all the new features. That's fast.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Per module, right? On average, it's like
so 1,000 modules, which is a lot. That's a second overall.
Yeah. To do all the type checking. Yeah. That's very cool.
I'll take it.
And Jose shared that they worked really hard on this release, that both Jose and Guillaume Duboc, sorry for the pronunciation, he is the PhD student who's been involved in the development and the application of set-theoretic types in Elixir. Those two had worked together, and they had to go beyond the current state of the art to optimize some key operations during set-theoretic type checking. And Jose shared that they will be publishing some articles later on about some of that work they had to do.
So if they're beyond the state of the art, I guess they
know.
Redefine state of the art.
It's a new state of the art.
Yeah, pushing boundaries here.
Yeah, because set-theoretic types, from what I recall, that was the first time it's been actually applied into a language. It's new ideas that were being done, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So state of the art already, and then you're pushing beyond that.
So would you say that that's country of the art then?
Ooh. Wow.
All right. Another
continent, maybe. Continent of the art.
So speaking of Elixir 1.19, there's another little new feature that is in there now. This is in Mix. So if you're ever curious about the overall layout of a whole library that you're using, for example, Phoenix, there's lots of modules in Phoenix. You can run mix help, and then there's a lot of tasks in there, right? But it's generally limited to mix tasks. What if they don't really have mixed tasks and you just want to know about the modules in there, right? Mm-hmm. If you can kind of visualize it a little bit, you can kind of imagine in hex docs, you've got the module tab and you can list all the modules in there. What if you wanted to do that in your CLI? Well, now you can do that with mix help app :Phoenix or any other, app that you have in your project that should give you a brief, first paragraph of all of the docs of the modules for that thing, which is really helpful, not just for you, but also for your robot friends, which could help to give them a lot of context on where to start. I've heard that is actually a nice technique for limiting token usage. When trying to perform a task, you could pre-run, your LLM to summarize all of the modules in there. So you basically give it a small, one sentence, what does this module do? And that, Mix Help app Phoenix will kind of do that, for you as well, so that your LLM can make better choices on where to go, where to investigate for functions that could help with whatever it needs to do. That's pretty nice. And just as a reminder, if you're one of those app publishers, you can exclude modules that are not relevant. So just don't forget, you can do module doc false, and it won't show up at that point, neither in hex docs nor in this new command.
Yeah, I can imagine that being helpful just on a regular project, not even just a library. I have this existing project. I want to seed my agents file or some documentation for the agent off of the project already. And it can just go through and compile all of that.
I mean, say you're at a project that doesn't have any of these. You could ask your LLM to basically go through each module and give it one sentence or one paragraph summary of it. They're pretty good at that. Yeah. And then to add it as the module doc.
I would. Cool.
Yeah.
Honestly, that stuff is so helpful for the humans in the project too. Just what is this thing again? Especially when you're new to it, or it's something you don't touch very often, you come back to it 6 months later. It's wait, where do I go for this? Documentation is handy. And yes, LLMs can do a great job at that too. This episode is sponsored by Paraxial.io, the only security platform with true Elixir support. I sat down with founder Michael Lubis to ask this week's security question. From your perspective, do you think the adoption of AI is making software more or less secure?
Yes, I think it's a true statement, not just my opinion. Everyone sort of believes this too at the moment. In 2025, the AI models are very, very impressive. At the same time, people are just using them to write complete garbage without look. Everyone knows this. So the lowering of kind of like the barrier to entry for software development, we're going to see that. Businesses like it because they can kind of ship more with spending less money, kind of like, the ultimate trade-off with security as well. People are making fun of Microsoft right now, I think, because their AI coding metrics went up. And then, when Windows has a bug, they're going to blame it on that. I wouldn't actually say that it hasn't quite caught up yet. I think it's going to be another few months or years before the debt really comes due. But yeah, it's a true statement. It's definitely a problem. Maybe the models will get better. I'm not even going to predict the future on that, but I will say that the phenomenon of people using AI to write software or even just write emails and not proofing them and sending them out, I think we've all been on the receiving end of that by now. It's a very real phenomenon.
Reach out to Michael at Paraxial.io to get personalized security feedback for your projects and your business. That's at Paraxial.io. All right, and next up. Quick update on Elixir's type system status. So Jose was asked the question, this was on X, we got a link to the question. It says, do you think we will get type declaration in Elixir by the end of the year? And Jose's answer was, the plan was to get typed structs by the end of this year, meaning 2025, but the plan was shifted because we decided to provide type inference of all constructs, not only patterns and guards. So we might have type structs by the end of next year. Until then, we will continue improving the type system to find bugs for free. So just a quick little update. They ended up changing how deep they went. Initially it was like, we're just going to do some of these type checks on patterns and guards. And then they realized, we're just going to go all the way down, all constructs. So yeah, they're changing as they go, which I think is cool. But yeah, if you're referring back to some previous conference talks where Jose was laying out the timeline, they're adjusting. So that just means we have some more fun stuff to look forward to next year.
All right, next up, Elixir gRPC library got a new release. It's 0.11. Got a couple links to some details here, but here's from the GitHub project what it says. So, let's describe the library first. So gRPC Elixir is a fully featured Elixir implementation of the gRPC protocol, supporting unary and streaming RPCs, interceptors, HTTP transcoding, and TLS, all of the good stuff, right? This version adopts a unified stream-based model for all types of calls. And so this new release, introduces client load balancing, which seems pretty hefty. That's a nice feature. Of course, following the official gRPC specs. So some other highlights is that it added error details support. That's got to be helpful. You always want to know what the heck happened when stuff fails. It improved cores handling, logging, and docs. That's a new one for me. I guess I just didn't understand gRPC enough to know why cores would even be involved. Here.
Yeah, I'm not an active user of gRPC, so
yeah.
But I know in a lot of enterprise environments, it's a really big deal.
Yeah. And then lastly, with every minor release like this one, there's always the other miscellaneous column of important fixes and resilient tests. So that's always great. So that is gRPC library, a good library that typically checks a lot of enterprise boxes. Just to be honest, a lot of folks will choose gRPC when they have a lot of software that has to talk to each other in different languages, and gRPC is one of the mechanisms to do that well. And that, again, that got updated to version 0.11.
And next up, there's a new rec library called ReqCassette. So if you're thinking cassette and you're thinking like, that sounds like VCR, it's like, yes, you've got the thread there. The idea is for tests to record a real request and they serialize it locally so you don't have to mock it manually. It's a lot like the EX VCR, and there's plenty of other libraries like this. I know it became very popular when I was in the Ruby space at the time. There are a lot of VCR and cassette packages like that.
Yeah.
But this one works with rec and it supports async tests.
Yeah, that's very nice.
Yeah, I think that was a limitation with EXVCR. I think that, David, you may have had some experience with that.
Yeah. I find it really convenient to be able to just like, okay, I've got my API key, I've got everything, I need to verify that everything's working. I'll have the real API key locally just to like, get it working. And then I have to write the tests for it. And so, I have to go copy and paste, like, what's the real thing that comes back? And then, and then mock it, right? And so basically rolling my own cassette here just in code. So this one will just simplify that a little bit to where you make that real request and it'll just serialize it for you, which is really nice. I remember from VCR days, if you have a lot of this, like this is your only way of doing API, or you're doing a lot of API mocking here, just be mindful that this means that you're going to have a lot more disk IO for when running your tests, so that could slow things down. But at least in this case, it's now async if you're using ReqCassette, so that could maybe offset some of my pessimism of using things like this. I remember, a previous code base I had used VCR a lot. So that required a lot of synchronous tests. And then on top of that, all the usual file IO stuff, which made things go pretty darn slow. So this should help. Very cool to see that. And plugs right into your usual rec steps, which is pretty nice. All right, next up, Twitter thread got some reply pile-ons that's worth paying attention to. This is all good stuff, of course. So Carl Clement asked us on social media, as you do, as one does, right? That's where you ask questions that you get real scientific feedback on, right? The question here is, who's using Elixir in production, and what's the project, and what feature made you take this route? And so that's the thread, right? And so there's a lot of folks that are just replying and sharing what their company is doing with Elixir. It's really interesting. So you can dig deeper and into the follow-ups as well. It's just really cool to see, people essentially just really sharing their success with Elixir and the Beam and how it played a role, into it. Let's see if I can find some ones here. So here's one. It says, we just started using it at Whataburger. Oh, wow. Whataburger. Okay. Using it for internal apps initially, but eventually we'll use it to rewrite some of our online ordering systems. This is perfect. This is Bryce Aries. The ability to cluster, reliability, etc., made it ideal for us, being that we are open 24/7 and need to handle real-time events. So yeah, that's really nice. Let's see. Another one is, we are at Join Leora, building a first platform for environmental intelligence. We transitioned from React to Phoenix and LiveView. So that's pretty cool. Looks like they're based out of Canada. Anyway, there's a good thread here. Really interesting to just like thumb through it a little bit and see what folks are choosing Elixir for. Really encouraging to see.
And next up, Herman Velasco has returned with a new Elixir stream video. And in this, he said, I wanted to see what the robots typically get wrong in new Phoenix apps. So he walked through a new Phoenix 1.8 application. When you do that, it generates an AGENTS.md file. So that's what he's walking through. So the full video is like 25 minutes long. And if you've been following any of his previous Elixir streams, then you know that they're typically shorter than that, like 1 to 2 minutes, something like that. So you can consume this by watching the whole 25-minute video, or he has split it up into about 12 smaller chunks that are closer to his typical short video style. But yeah, so this is all about the AGENTS.md file. And we talked previously with Chris McCord about his work with Phoenix.new, the web service that's part of fly.io. And that was in episode 259. We got a link to that. And in there, he explained that LLMs were a lot like humans in that they made a lot of the same common mistakes. So for that reason, he put all of that work into tuning the AGENTS.md file to say, don't try to index into a list. Do it this way. Don't do this. Do it this way. With Phoenix LiveView, do this. Just kind of giving examples of what not to do and what to do. And the whole benefit of that is you're reducing iterations where the agent will try to do something, get it wrong, figure out it did it wrong, and then get it right. But those are just wasted iterations and token usage. So yeah, that's all what went into the AGENTS.md file. And so Herman Velasco is going through this whole process of just walking through, what are these things that we can learn from this? Some of those things still are the things that trip up humans. So if you're newer to the Elixir space, it's a great thing to just walk through and say, oh, that's the way I'm supposed to do this. Great to see him coming back to doing some of these videos.
And speaking of which, he posted another one this morning, another short one. This is, definitely short. This one's just illustrating some of Ecto's daytime helpers. So good reminder. Sometimes it's hard to find some of these. So you know the database has a bunch of functions, and Ecto has some wrappers that wrap some of these up. And one of those good ones is around daytime. There's several of them. I'll just have one example here. But for example, you can write, in your query, my datetime column or something is greater than or equal to, whatever operator you want, ago, 1, and then the unit of time, like commonly would be like 1 day ago, right? Mm-hmm. So that way you don't have to do all that date time, UTC now, shift and all that kind of, it's like 3 lines just to get in Elixir 1 day ago, or 3 functions or something. Ultimately, I have to truncate something too. So this one shifts that work over into the SQL side and just uses the SQL function of ago, and it has some of those nifty helpers too. And there's several other ones like that as well. So that short is a good little illustration of what's available there. Ecto doesn't wrap all of them, so you sometimes you do have to like drop down into a fragment. So be sure to check out the docs for your database as well. There could be some really much simpler ways to do that little, especially date time stuff, but there's other helpful things as well. All right, hey, next up, Brian Cardarella is in the news a lot, huh? He is the head of Dockyard Development Studio, and he shared an interesting industry insight online. So we've got a link to the full thing here, but here's a quote from he said. He said, "We have recently seen many clients coming to Dockyard that need assistance finishing their app. That's not newsworthy." But he continues, "Nearly every time it is some AI slop generated app that looks to be a nightmare to be built to build on top of." For every great dev out there able to demonstrate high value and quality of AI code gen, there's like 100 non-devs just flooding the world with this slop. All right, so yeah, okay, I can really see that point. So he goes on to say, most of these leads come from very low cost expectations. At best, I'd say the market is evolving or is in flux. Another person, Brian Bryce, jumped in. He says, "It's creating a lot more work for me, consultancy of one. If the budget expectations are low, then we sign a service contract, but they are on a deprioritized queue for getting the project launched. So I've been building services, monthly revenue, recurring revenue on for the first time in my career this way." So all very interesting, right? So I think you have the idea here, but for all the code that gets thrown out there so quickly through vibe coding stuff, which we know intuitively that it's just not going to be very good. Yes, it might work, but as soon as you want to build on top of it, it ends up being more of a nightmare, right? And so then you start asking for help because your vibe coding session has come to its end of usefulness, right? So you need some actual human that knows what they're doing to help out with this. This is where consultancies, where 6 months ago they were like, we're getting hammered. We're losing all of our clientele because of this. And well, now there's not that that's coming back, but there is another opportunity here, and maybe this is just the timing, of things. Well, now that stuff has been shipped out there, people are building products on it. Now they're swinging back around to get the real help that they maybe should have done 6 months ago. To extend that, it's bringing a little bit more good news for once back to some of these consultancies.
Yeah, I liked in that little thread, I liked Will King's positive take on this. He says, speaking to Brian's original post, like, this is very true, but it's exciting that it's giving people who never would have taken those first steps the momentum to get over the barrier of trying their idea. Calling out that you can't clean up code for an idea that died in someone's head.
Yeah, very true.
It's like, yeah, there's a positive spin on this, which is there are businesses and people who never would previously, because of cost and just fear of concern, like this is too big, taken on a major project that then, because it became so cheap, they could go to somebody who could generate something very quickly for them. They have something now. And now they're like, this is almost everything I need. I need someone to help me finish it. But now you're in that stage of, well, okay, you may have gotten where you were very cheaply. And so the problem that we're having right now is maybe the continued expectation that the fixing this will be cheap too. But now you get like humans and actual focus time and more hours are needing to be spent. So it's just an interesting time. The development of this is still in flux. I like getting that little insight as to what people with consultancies are seeing.
That's pretty neat. I really love that. Yeah, some of the hardest things is just getting started on the thing, right? If AI is helping people get started and break through that initial barrier, that's wonderful. You know, I think that's good. That's good news for a lot of folks. And then if they continue with that, at least they have the momentum and maybe a little bit of revenue to actually pay for developers again to extend it, to help out with it and all that kind of stuff.
A lot of the advice for startups is get something in front of your users as fast as possible to validate your idea, because you're probably going to need to shift and pivot to something else. You're not exactly what the market needs. If that's the case, then vibe coding something to get it out there in front of people, that's really saving you an incredible amount of time and really lowering the risk to trying new ideas. So now you're like, okay, we have something that is working. It's meeting a need of a group that we're trying to serve. And then, how many startups has it always been where, yeah, we were just building the proof of concept, and we knew once we had it, we would throw that away and do it the right way. But you never do. You always end up building on the proof of concept. I think this is just a different iteration of that. Like, this is the new version of what has existed in the past. It's just, I don't know, it's different, but it's the same. All right. And next up, the Elixir Observer website has gotten some updates by the folks over at Mimicwait. And I've got a link to like the rec package as an example where you can see what this looks like. So first, what is Elixir Observer? It's just a website that helps gather information that's publicly available from, you've got the GitHub page for a project, the HexPM page, and maybe the Hex docs. And so it's just pulling together different sources of information that's already out there that you can go find yourself, pulls that together to make it a little bit more easy to read and assess when you're looking at a specific package. And what this new update does is it has a better design visually. It also shows unrelated changes per package. It's linking to GitHub to see more information about that. But it also adds categories. And this one, I think, is where you really get into the whole discovery idea. So previously, you would go and say, I know what package I want to read up on. I'm going to look at that package. But the category search is more of, I know I'm wanting to solve something around authentication. I don't even know what packages I should be looking at. So this is helping you by category, like we're just looking at the categories alphabetically, like actors has 21 packages, artificial intelligence has 37 packages, audio and sound, 16, authentication, 82. It's for the discovery process. I think that's really cool. Lots of times you'd get those lists on GitHub, which are the curated awesome lists where everyone just like puts in all the different links to different things that are already categorized. So this is like a new version of that. And the other feature is semantic search, and you have better matching with that. So anyway, if you haven't checked it out recently, give it another look and see if you can discover some new package in a category that you're interested in.
All right, next up, we had discussed, coding with AI agents and how if you had several of them, they could modify each other's instructions and then possibly get you in trouble. And so what they're effectively doing is like remote code execution, right? That's the breach there. So we saw Chris McCord's recent announcement regarding his FlyO work with a different perspective. So I'll read it out for you. So Claude code in a sandbox from scratch to auth and ready in about 15 seconds. And so he has, a video here that shows, a whole new isolated, that's the idea here, isolated Claude code instance running in a sandbox, which is a Fly machine in his case, all ready in about 15 seconds. And so to quote here, it says, "This is where I've been running all my Claude YOLO sessions. I send it off, on task and then close my laptop and go to bed." This is what brought me back to Tmux and Vim. Oh, that explains his, okay, I did see him update some dot files lately. And I was like, what is he got? I thought he was an Evax guy. Anyway, but you can just as easily set up a VS Code tunnel and go full ham there as well. Anyway, that's the end of the quote there. So it's an interesting idea for running an AI agent fully isolated from your local machine. He promised, hold him to it, that he's going to share more in the future. Very cool to see that. And yes, that is very cheap, a very cheap way as well, I think, to to spin up a fly.io, machine instance, and it has more access, right? If you have its own app and cluster, therefore, it could theoretically, go spin up other services that it needs as well, not just that one little app that you need, right? It doesn't have to be isolated to the one thing. Could be interesting, worth considering.
Yeah, but from our discussion about the AI security concern, it's like, well, you could run them in Docker instances. You could maybe choose to only use one agent instead of two agents, so you don't have that cross-agent issue. This idea is just like, well, you can run it in a fly machine and totally isolated from your environment. So your environment, my laptop has the keys. It has other things in it that are sensitive that I don't want access to. Run it somewhere else.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And they make it easy. Yeah, it really is easy.
Yeah, so I'll be interested to see what he has to share with that coming up sometime soon. All right, and last up, there was an NPM announcement about some new security changes. So why are we talking about NPM? So this is because we are talking about the biggest package repository in the industry. And Hex is one of those. Ruby Gems is another. There's every major platform or language has something like this. And so why we're talking about this is because they just announced it, like as of recording, I received this email this morning. And so they're making some changes. And so we should expect these types of changes to be adopted and trickle out as they're deemed successful or not, or whatever, into other communities as well. So what this one is they announced some security changes. And they said, why are we making these changes? Quote, recent supply chain attacks have shown that compromised long-lived tokens are a critical vulnerability. These phase changes are essential to protect the NPM ecosystem and your packages from malicious actors. So they're really shortening the length of duration that a token is valid for. So no more long-lived ones. And they're scaling it out slowly, giving people like a month to adapt. And some of this is most applicable to like your CI/CD workflows, where it might be using these tokens that are long-lived in your CI/CD. So what they say, what you need to do is review your NPM publishing CI/CD workflows that use granular tokens, plan for more frequent token rotation, and consider migrating to trusted publishers and OIDC for GitHub Action workflows. So a way of maybe handing off some of that token management even. And they say existing granular tokens will continue working with their current expiration dates, giving you time to transition. And then they clue us in, more changes ahead. This is the first of several security updates. Additional phases will follow in the coming months, including further 2FA improvements and expanded trusted publisher support. We'll communicate each phase in advance. So I expect everyone's going to be watching what NPM does. They're so big just by volume. And I expect we're going to see these types of changes adopted into Hex and other platforms as well. So it's worth paying attention to. And I think there's already some changes in the works.
Yeah, I don't know the exact plan, but I do know that they're testing in Hex the CLI and probably the web portion as well, authorization process that I believe is going to require 2FA. So that's good news, I think, right? We want to make sure that folks don't get, bamboozled. And so 2FA is, I feel like a very low, risk requirement, very low ask requirement for publishers to use that platform, Hex, to distribute. So that way we ensure the safety of all the folks that are relying on your packages. Yeah, and I don't know the rest of the plans, but I do know that like the Erlang Ecosystem Foundation's, security working group has been hard at work, doing a lot of these kinds, of security initiatives, and Hex is definitely a big part of that supply chain. So yeah, I'm curious to see how we're going to be inspired by what NPM is doing. But I do know at least the RC of Hex has some upcoming changes that's going to make things more secure, I think, by default.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening. We hope you'll join us next time on Thinking Elixir.